Did you know Stephen King gives permission to adapt his movies to students for $1? That is just amazing. I don't know of any other author that does anything like that.
Hello, Daphne. How are you?
Great, and you? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. King on Screen. I'm so excited to talk with you about this. This was the first movie I watched for Fantastic Fest this year. Are you going to be in Austin?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I will be there at the end of the week, actually.
Yeah. Awesome. I'll be there too. Let's talk about King on Screen, shall we? So, Daphne, this unbelievably amazing documentary, King on Screen, about Stephen King and his film adaptations. I just loved it. But first, I got to ask you, like in The Sound of Music, we have to start at the very beginning. Daphne, where did it all begin with you in film? Was it something you saw with your parents on their TV? Where did it all start with you in movies?
Well, actually, I've always been a huge movie fan. I've grown up with a mother who's a movie lover. She loves American cinema and cinema in general. So I was watching a lot of movie growing up. And the first time I discovered Stephen King was through The Shining, but the book, but as well through the Green Mile. Actually, I saw the Green Mile when I was very young, and I totally fell in love with that movie. And yeah, I think it contributes a lot to the fact that I wanted to direct, because I really loved what Frank Darabont did with the rhythm of the story. And yeah, it was really, I was inspired by that film a lot. Yeah.
No, that's wonderful. And so this is a pretty, there's multifaceted elements to this documentary, in that there are so many directors and producers you had to get. Tell me what was going through your mind getting everybody to come to this amazing party to talk about Stephen King and movies? Was it like, oh my God, the world's on fire? Or was it like really easy or something like that?
Well, it was so thrilling, because at first when I talked with the producer about the fact that I wanted to make a documentary about Stephen King, and through the eyes of the directors, we said, okay, let's do it, but we have to know if the directors are willing to talk to us. So we sent like 10 emails just to see if the directors were willing to do it. And like in 2 days, we had 10 yes. So we were like, oh, that's amazing. Let's do this. Let's go into it. And then when we met the first directors, they told us, okay, have you met him? We were like, no, not yet. We are not in touch yet with that director. Okay, I will send him an email because I know him. And like, we had so many directors saying, okay, so you want to get in touch with him? I know him. I will send him an email. And that's how, bit by bit, we had such a great cast, because every director was like so helpful and wanted the film to be made, and saying, yeah, I know him. I will send him an email. So that's how we got Greg Nicotero, Josh Boone, David Stig, so many directors as well. So it was magical somehow.
That's incredible. And Daphne, can we talk about this next thing? Because I was so excited about this when I heard these words from your documentary, and it just, it made my heart full. And I'm so happy, like, this documentary, there must be so many times this happened during all the interviews, but the documentary started talking about Kubrick, and there was a story about Stanley Kubrick, making a phone call at 2 a.m. and just asked, hey, does God exist? And that, because I've studied Kubrick and I have not heard this story about him, and I've talked with other directors that knew him, and I've never heard this story. So when you heard this, where did your mind go to, and what kind of other fun moments like this, maybe that didn't make the cut or that just stuck with you, came out of your interviews? Because that is just amazing. I just can't imagine getting a call from Kubrick with, I just got one question. Oh yeah, what is it? Does God exist? Mind blown.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and it's interesting because it asks the question about what did Kubrick really wanted to say, actually, or to know. Did he mean, does God exist in The Shining, for example? Is God present in the story? Was it something like this? And it's hard to really know exactly what he meant by that, but considering that he was not a huge fan, let's put it that way, of supernatural or phantasmagorical stuff. Um, it's interesting to think about this particular moment, because it's like completely surreal. You're like in the middle of the night having a question like this. It's like, okay, so it's let's talk about the beginning of the universe somehow. So at 2 a.m. So it's completely surreal. But there are some quite interesting anecdotes like that as well. Regarding Kubrick, one I really enjoyed as well was the fact that Michael Afstrom used the same axe than the one that was used on The Shining. I thought that was an amazing one. And yeah, there are some little, like I would say, some pearls like this in the documentary, some kind of good anecdotes that are
Yeah,
thrilling.
the Bruce Willis one was great too. Where Bruce Willis calls, there's like, you got to get him. We're like, oh, okay, Bruce Willis just told me to.
Yeah, completely. The kind of thing that put out of the context of making films. It's like, yeah, there's Bruce Willis who calls Frank Darabont and tell him that it's like surreal. It's like, yeah, and it's interesting to have all these little ones like this. One I really love as well is about the song in The Green Mile, when why Frank Darabont chose that particular film that John Coffey is watching. I think it's very moving. And so, yeah, I thought it was such a great choice. It was very well thought.
No, it's wonderful. It was great. And I love, what was your creative process like in making kind of, you got to kind of conjure up all of these famous moments in Stephen King books and movies with your own. And so something like the elevator blood rushing in The Shining, but you used, the balloons falling out the elevator. That was bad ass. And I'm just like, what was the creative process? I'm sure you had all these ideas. Like, how'd you come up with some of those?
Well, thank you so much for the elevator, because actually it's such a fun story. We were shooting the trailer before making all the interviews in Belgium, and we were like, okay, we want to do some kind of artistic shots, like references to Stephen King, because we had this fictional introduction that we planned to do with this story that we can see at the beginning of the film, and we wanted to do to just give a glimpse to that huge intro that we wanted to make. So we thought, okay, let's do some kind of fictional shots, and we were in this hotel and we were thinking about, okay, what could we do? And I was talking to Michael, which is a great friend of mine, and he was on the set, and I told him, okay, well, you know what, we are going to do something with balloons. I don't know what yet, but could you blow all the balloons? And he was like, okay, I will do it for sure. And there were like more than 100 balloons actually. And so he was sitting in his hotel room, blowing all the balloons, and there were like 100 balloons in his hotel room. And then the housekeeper came in and she saw him. He was sitting on the bed, balloons everywhere, one balloon in his mouth. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. And leaving the room in a rush. So we have some great anecdotes about the shooting, and at that moment I told him, okay, we have to find a solution, because you can't like put all the balloons in the elevator to go somewhere else. And that's how I came up with the idea. I said, yeah, that's what we have to do actually. We have to have this elevator opening and all the balloons came down. And I thought that's the perfect reference actually. It's The Shining meets it. And so we worked on some different shots like this. We did some in Belgium with a lot of reference, like the beginning with the car and everything in the car. So many references there. So we really wanted to have the feeling that we are entering in the Stephen King universe in this documentary.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. And has Stephen King seen the movie yet?
Well, actually, he did. We sent him work in progress version of the film, and we were like so stressed because we were okay. We hope so much that he will like the movie, and like a couple of days or weeks after, we got an email and he said, I really enjoyed the film. So we were like, oh, that's a relief. Okay, we can breathe again.
Awesome. Chef's kiss right there from the maestro. Well, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Daphné, for talking with me today. Hope to see you in Austin later this week. I'll be there and we'll talk more. Thank you so much.
Yeah, with pleasure. Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Stephen King is a master storyteller. I think you'd have to grow up under a rock if you didn't know who Mr. King was and his work.
He's an extraordinary writer. He's sort of like the Charles Dickens of the 20th and 21st century.
Most of his stories are so vivid that they just translate well to film.
Christine was such a good film, and Carrie was such a good film.
From It to The Shining, the David Cronenberg Dead Zone,
Cujo,
Stand By Me,
Shawshank Redemption.
As long as he keep on writing, there will be films made of his books, because he creates worlds and he creates atmospheres that I think is very attractive to filmmakers.
I think the thing that works about King, people adapting his work into film, is again his ability to burrow under the skin of characters, to really examine the darkness of humanity in such a unique, murky, funny, complex way.
Adaptation is complicated because very bold choices have to be made. There's no way you can translate 600 pages of a book into a screenplay and keep everything.
You want to be slavishly faithful to the source material, but at the same time still have them make sense within the context of motion picture.
And to hear Mr. King say, wow, what an ending, I wish I would have thought of that. You have to applaud whoever came up with that ending.
and we were going to have a call with Mr. King, and I said, what do you think I should say first? I think I'm going to tell him how much I love The Shining. And he said, I wouldn't do that because he thinks it's a total piece of shit.
I think the Stanley Kubrick adaptation of The Shining is fantastic. Deep down, the essence of that movie is so Stephen King. It's not like Stanley Kubrick ejected Stephen King. I think he just kind of absorbed it into his world vision and then made something that is a beautiful amalgam of the two and really captures the essence of the book.
Did you know Stephen King gives permission to adapt his movies to students for $1? That is just amazing. I don't know of any other author that does anything like that.
King allows for a lot of engagement. Art is knowing what to leave out. Leave out something and then the reader adds that, and now I get to make my own movie. That's why I think King is great.
That's the legend of Stephen King.